All right, so today we're going to be able to simplify expressions by combining like terms and using the distributive property. So I know that this is a lot of information today, so I'm going to go a little bit slower on this. Don't forget, you guys are always able to fast forward and pause. So if I'm going too slow, skip. If I'm going too fast, give it a pause. All right, so let's just jump into combining like terms. So what I'm going to look for is I'm going to create teams. All right, and I'm going to create teams based on what comes after our number. All right, and what you can see is some of these numbers have something that come after it, and some of them don't. So here for my first number, I'm going to, pause. When I do this, I'm always going to start from left to right. That's a personal preference. I figure anytime I can incorporate a little bit of English strategy, we're doing something well in math. So we're just going to read left to right, just if we do a book. So I'm going to start with 8x. All right, I notice that I have this x here, right? I have this x. So I want to find all the other numbers that have this x. This x is a variable. It's attached to my 8 through multiplication, right? That means that I have 8 x's. So I want to find another number that has this x attached to it. I come to the left, I have a 4 with no x, a 1 with no x, but I have this positive 5 here with an x. All right, so what I want to do is I want to go ahead and group these two together. They're going to be partners, right? They're going to be on the same team. All right, and they're connected by this x. All right, well, when I look at my positive 4 and my positive 1, I see that I don't have anything after them. There's no variable attached to them. So these are what we're going to call constants, right? And again, I'm going to start from the left to the right, and I have a positive 4 and I have a positive 1. Notice that for both of these, I'm grabbing this sign as well. All right, I'm grabbing this sign. And this starting off 8x is just going to be a positive. There's no sign that implies that it's negative, or positive, sorry, implies that it's positive. All right, with that said, what I'm going to do is kind of regroup these, rearrange them, get them in a way that I can really work with them. So I'm going to have 8x plus 5x. And then I also have this plus 4 and this plus 1. And what I kind of like to think about is really what I have here is two different math problems, right? Two small, easy, no problem math problems. All right, so I have an 8x plus 5. All right, big thing here is use Desmos if you need to, right? Use it if you need to, but all we're doing is adding these numbers in the front. And these numbers in front of the variable are called coefficients. All right, these are called coefficients. So we're adding 8 and 5. So I have 8 plus 5, which is going to give me 13x. Another way you guys can think about this is kind of like when we did the modeling yesterday. So I have 8 x's. I'm adding 5 x's, and I'm not going to draw 13 x's. Oh, why not? So now I have 13 x's. All right. This doesn't mean that I have 13 and then an x. I have 13 actual x's. Think about it too if we're subtracting. Like if you have 4 apples and then somebody eats 2 apples, you don't have 2, you have 2 apples. So this is the same thing. I have 8 x's, somebody gives me 5 x's. I don't have just 13. I have 13 x's. All right, and then on the constant part, basic arithmetic, you're just adding is going to be 13x plus 5. All right, another one. Again, we're going to get our teams. Notice I have my 4x. We know this guy's positive because there's no negative in front of him. I go through, I got a plus 2y. No, it's not on my x team. I got a minus 7x. That's going to be on my x team. Plus 3y, not on my x team. All right. Again, we're going to skip over 4x. We already circled him. We get to this plus 2y. Notice I'm circling the sign as well, right? and plus 3y. So now I'm going to create my two small math problems within this one larger math problem. All right, here again, remember we're only looking at this coefficient, the number in front of the x. All right, so I have a 4, positive 4, minus 7. Throw that in Desmos. Throw plus 4, minus 7. Literally, type this in Desmos. And what you'll get is negative 3. All right, so we're going to have a negative 3x. Over here, throw this in Desmos. Plus 2 plus 3. All right, and we're going to get a plus or positive 5. And do not forget about your variable, y. All right, so negative 3x plus 5y. All right, on this one, I'll show you some maybe some good test taking tips. All right, so I've got a 1. Do another different type of way that you can organize these numbers. This is actually the way that I did this in college. So I have a 1. See, now that's a constant, so there's no variable. 2x minus x. I have my plus 7 and a y. That's a y. It's not going to work. All right. So I have my plus 2x, and I have just a negative x. All right. So this might throw some of you off, and I'm just kind of realizing why. Well, remember, there's this 1 here. It's not imaginary. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. Well, anytime we have a number in a variable, like a 2 and an x, what this is saying is 2 times x. 2 times x. All right, right here we have a negative 1 times, or negative 1, sorry, we have a negative x. Well, there's this 1 here, which is negative 1 times x. Well, what is negative, or what is 1 times anything? If I have 1 times x, that equals x. If I have 1 times 5, that equals 5. If I have 1 times a star, that's going to equal a star, right? And in the same way, if I have a negative, negative 1 times 5 just equals negative 5, right? This 1 doesn't really do much. It's an identity for multiplication, but the negative is going to come with it, right? Negative 1 times your star is going to be a negative star, all right? All right, so I do have this negative 1x. And then all by itself, no teammates, is this negative 5y. All right, in math, what we like to do is kind of group things in alphabetical order. So I'll have my 2x minus my 1x. And if y'all want to write that 1 there, go ahead. There's no reason why you cannot write that 1 there. Look, I'm adding this plus 1 because I know this 1 is positive. And I'm just going to add them all. I'm just going to add my 7 as well. All right, from here, I have 3, really 2, but we'll call them 3 because I have 3 different colors on the screen, tiny math problems. So again, we look at the coefficients, the number in front of the variable. 2 minus 1 is 1. So I have 1x. But I know that I don't really need that 1 there, so I'm going to just kind of get rid of it. Can't do anything with this 5y because it's just kicking it by itself. Now I have a 1 and a 7, 1, positive 1 plus a 7, positive 1 and a positive 7, going to give me a plus 8. All right, I said I was going to show you guys good test taking tips, but I wasn't paying attention. So let's just look at this first variable, or this first value for what our final answer is. Well, I have a 1x or an x. So I'm going to look at A, I have an x, B, I have a 3x, so B's out. C, I have an x, D, I have a negative x, so D's out. All right, let's look at A again. Now I'm looking at this negative 5y. I have a negative 5y, negative 5y. So A and C are still perfectly good answers, right? And last but not least, I look at this plus 8. Well, A, I have a plus 8, so A's looking real good. But here I have a plus 7, so C is out. All right. By now, you guys are probably getting the hang of this, so I'll kind of like speed it up. I have a constant. I have my team X, negative. Don't forget to grab that negative. My team X. And then I have my 8y and a negative y. Don't forget there's a 1 here for my y. There's a 1 here with my x. All right, so let's put our x's together. So I have negative 10x plus 1x. Let me get my y's in here. Remember, we're doing this in alphabetical order. Y. And I have a negative 6 plus a 12. All right, so just do these in individual pieces. Negative 10 plus 1, just doing the coefficients, will give me a negative 9x. All right, I'm going to do my blue or my Y team. Positive 8 minus 1 is going to give me a positive 7y. And then if I have negative 6 plus 12, that's just going to give me a positive 6. So if I come down to my answers, I'm looking for a negative 9x. A's out, C's out. Now I'm looking for a positive 7y. B's out. So I already know my answer is D, but I'm going to go ahead and double check for my 6 here, and we're good. All right. We have an 11, negative 4. We have a 6x. Whoops. A negative 1x, a negative 1y, and a positive 3y. So I'm going to lose these ones because at some point you guys aren't going to use them anymore. You won't need to. And 6 minus 1x, that's going to give me a positive 5x. So let's just look at the answers. A is still good, B is still good, C is still good, D is out. All right, negative 1y plus a 3, negative 1 plus 3, negative 1 plus 3. Put that in your calculator. You're going to get 2y. All right, I'm looking for a positive y, good, positive 2y, good. B is now out. And then 11 minus 4 is just going to give us a positive 7. Positive 11 minus 4. A is good, C's out. All right, I'm going to do, oh yeah, I'll do both of these. These are good ones. All right, so here we have a team of 3n. Now, a lot of you are like, oh, n, no, no, no. We're going to have 3n plus 8n squared. No, that's a squared right here. That's a different thing, right? That's a different team, right? I know they're all n's, but once you have an exponent involved, then it becomes a different team. So our teams are going to be 3n and negative n. Another team is going to be plus 8n squared minus 3n squared. And then our plus 1. All right, so that's just kind of a tricky concept. There's a video in your daily folder that kind of talks about this for a second. All right, in math, not only do we like things in alphabetical order, but we usually put the higher exponents first. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my green numbers or my n squared team first. Then my n's, just my regular n's. I'm not even going to go into y. I mean, technically, there's a little 1 right here, but it doesn't affect anything. All right, you guys will learn that as you go along. So again, just look at your coefficients. 8 minus 3, 5n squared. 3 minus 1 gives you 2, positive 2n. And then we get a plus 1. All right, so 5n squared. Let's see. If you looked at this and tried to figure this out before I did it, if you got B, that's because you added 3n, 8n squared minus n minus 3n squared. Right? You put all of your n's, even though in these are different, the squared are a different team together. All right. 5n. We know A is out because we need a positive 2n. And then down here for C and D. Now this happened in class a lot. The answer is C, right? Because everything's positive. A lot of people just for some reason missed this symbol and said D, but it is incorrect because this is negative 1 and we're looking for is positive 1. All right, last but not least for this. Our teams are 4G, negative 4G, positive 3K, positive 2K. And I have 4G minus 4G, plus 3K plus 2K. Well, when you guys look at a 4G, a positive 4G minus 4G, again, we're going to look at our coefficients, and we have 4 minus 4, which gives us 0. Well, like I said earlier, the number and the variable are connected because of multiplication, right? So if I have 0 times G, that's just going to give me 0, which is nothing, which is exactly what I'm going to write. These guys cancel out. They just go away. Think about it. If I have 4 apples and I eat all 4 of my apples, how many apples do I have? None. So I don't have anything to show for it. So I'm not going to write it down. All right. And all that leaves me with is this little problem right here, which is going to be 5K. So A is your correct answer. B and D, we really didn't have any issues with. If you pick C, you were thinking that G had to stick around. But again, if you have 4 G's, right, and then somebody takes your 4 G's, now you have no G's. So there's no need to even write this G. All right, now we're going to get into the distributive property. So the distributive property is used in math to show multiple quantities of terms. So 4 parenthesis m plus 5 parenthesis means 4, I lost my word. 4, not sections, or pieces, or amounts. It means it's going to be 4, there's going to be 4 of these. There's going to be 4 of this m plus 5. Mathematically, we could take the number on the outside of the parentheses and multiply it to each term inside. This right here is going to drive me crazy. So let's talk about this. Combining like terms. So we started off with 4m plus 5. But what this is telling us, if we're combining like terms, is that there's 4 sets of m plus 5. There it is. Means 4 sets of m plus 5. So that means we have 4 of these. All right, already I'm writing a lot. So you know there's going to be a shorter way to do this. So I'm circling all my like terms. Don't forget to get that sign in there with the 5. And you'll see what I have is 1, 2, 3, 4 m's. And I have 5, 10, 15, 20 plus 20. Because I have 4 sets of positive 5. Well, what we can do is we could take this 4m plus 5 and we can distribute this 4 to each number, both of them, inside of these parentheses. And we know that because the 4 is butted right up against the parentheses. So when the 4 is butted up against the parentheses, no other sign, that means multiplication. We also know that there's a 1 in front of this m. So 4 times 1 is 4. Do not forget about your m. And 4 times a positive 5 is just positive 20. Make sure you grab that sign. That's going to make a difference when we get to doing negatives. All right, so give you guys the answers. If we do 12 times 3m and 12 times 5, because we have to distribute it to both. Remember, we are grabbing that 5 and we are not going to forget about our m. 12 times 3 is 36. Don't forget about that m. 12 times 5 is 60. Don't forget about this sign, right? Because these are both positive. So it's just gonna be D. All right, now we're getting into the negatives. Things get a little bit more tricky here. So I have negative 4 times 10s times a negative 3. Well, one thing you guys probably noticed is like, well, oh no, sorry, that'll be next. I'm getting ahead of myself. Negative 4 times 10 is going to be negative 40. Do not forget about this S, right? Because we're multiplying. So that S just kind of comes along with it. -4 times -3. Cannot tell you how many people told me that was -12. Remember, in math, 2 negatives make a positive. That only works in math. Right? Do not take that as a life motto. So our correct answer is A. Right? Negative times a negative will give us our positive 12. All right, here's where you really might want to use the calculator because now we have a scary decimal. So 0.2 times 40 and a -10W. And here's what I was saying. First thing you guys notice, like, whoa, why is the variable the second number? It's cool. We've looked at this when we were combining like terms. So I know 0.2 times 40, throw it in the calculator, you're just going to get 8. All right, and 0.2 times a -10W is going to give you a -2W. Don't forget about that sign. Do not forget about the variable. All right, now what you see here is you're like, oh, none of my answers match up. Well, they do. So let's look for a -2 first. -2W, -20W, -20W. So B and D are out. Well, now we need to look for a positive 8 because we know that there's no symbol in front of the 8, which implies that it's positive. So A is our answer, plus this at a 20. Now, if you wanted to write this the correct way, remember your variables always go first. All right, 2 more, and then we're done, and I apologize for this one running long. So I'm going to distribute my third to my 9Z as well as my 27. So 1/3 times 9 will give me 3. Don't forget about your variable. 1/3 times 27 will give me 9. Do not forget about this sign. Again, you're like, none of these work. Well, let's look for a positive 3Z. Good in A, not in B, good in C, good in D. All right. Now let's look for a positive 9. See, positive 27, not going to work. -9, not going to work. Positive 9, C is our answer. And like I said, it's the same thing, just written a little bit different. All right, so don't stress about that. Just because it doesn't look the exact same, if you understand, you won't have any issues. But I did have a lot of kids pick A because they were like, well, it looks the closest. Look at your signs. These are your big giveaways here. Right? These are all positive. All right. And last, we just have this negative, just this ugly looking negative. Well, this negative really has an invisible, well, it's not invisible, but it's there. There's a 1 there. So what we're doing is we're multiplying or distributing with multiplication a -1 to both our positive 2y plus our 5. And like we talked about earlier, anything times 1 is itself. Anything times -1 is the same number, just negative. So very simple. We're just going to distribute that negative side. And you'll see that your answer is C. All right. If you've made it this far and you totally understand, don't even worry about this. But just because, like, I don't know, I feel like I have to. What we're really doing is taking -1 times 2y plus a -1 times a 5. All right. So when we distribute it, it looks like we're making our more work for ourselves. But if you can do this in your head, it saves you time. And you know that -1 times 2y is just -2y. Remember, we kept our plus sign because that was what was in the problem. -1 times 5 is a -5. You have a -2y plus a -5. You can just kind of lose this guy, and that'll just be a -5. Same answer. All right, y'all got questions? Let me know. Other than that, have a great day, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Don't forget we have a test on Friday.